Hello. Welcome to a very special episode of Bitching About Movies. The podcast you are about to hear may startle you. It would not have been possible otherwise to sufficiently emphasize the frightful toll of the new drug menace which is destroying the youth of America in alarmingly increasing numbers. Marijuana is that drug, a violent narcotic, an unspeakable scourge, the real public enemy number one.
Happy 420, everyone. That was Matt scaring me, maybe you. And this is Frank. This is one of our special episodes. And if you know anything about us, it would make sense to do one around April the 20th of 4. And
I've heard worse excuses to do a topical episode.
Yeah. We don't do Christmas ones yet, but we want to do a topical one. And why not give you a list of movies that you may or may not want to watch on this sacred holiday? Unlike our what to watch this week, our WTWs that you've hopefully heard earlier this week, and we'll have a new one out on Monday. This one is focused on a certain topic or person, and the topic of choice is stoner/weed movies. And I think an interesting topic. One that was hard to find streaming options for, which is like usually Netflix and Hulu are on the ball with holidays and just topical situations. Not so much here.
Yeah, and we covered a lot on this one too, despite the lack of streaming options. We do have some streaming options for you, but we covered we covered 8 movies, you guys. We each have 4 that we're going to talk about, and for a topic episode for us, like eight's pretty solid. That's a girthy number for us.
Yeah, I'm going to try to not think about that girth comment. But anyways, so also a category that there's not very many sleepers, because any kind of halfway decent or good indie, and a lot of them are independent effort, stoner movies get pushed up. They become cult classics almost immediately. So there's really no unknown. And we talked about maybe doing Smiley Face, but that was just too hard to find.
Yeah, that one I couldn't find anywhere.
But there's no like weed movie with people you've never heard of. It's just maybe an underfunded indie movie. There's
also different kinds of movies, and I think we covered a lot of different kinds here. You have when I think of a stoner movie, I think of primarily a comedy, probably like a buddy comedy, and something kind of wacky, goofy, silly, something you can get high and laugh at. But there's also introspective movies about people who just happen to smoke or deal marijuana. So there's options out there for sure,
and a lot of them are mission based. A lot of them feature a protagonist that is not fulfilling up to their potential. That seems to be a common
slackers.
Theme. Yeah, and I worried that I was gonna be like, yeah, I like this movie, but there's at least one that I surprisingly did not enjoy as much as I thought I would. And it'll be interesting. And a couple that might not even be pro-weed movies. I think there's some anti-marijuana rhetoric hidden deep in these movies, which I think is also interesting.
There is. And none more so than the movie that I want to start with, and the one that I actually watched just before coming over here to record, so it is fresh in my mind, is the original Reefer Madness from 1936. That is what the opening quote from this episode is from. If you haven't put that together yet.
If you didn't guess it.
This is streaming on Amazon Prime. I watched the colorized version. I didn't really care. I just picked one. There seems like there's a lot of different versions of it on Amazon. But I picked that. It was colorized by a group that did it later on, and they made over the top colorization on a lot of the characters to kind of offset the weed motif, I guess. There's some subliminal messaging in it too. They flash 420 on the screen real quick at one point.
Oh, so it's like a remastered version, re-edited version.
Kind of by cult fans. It's almost like if someone remixed Rocky Horror.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Reefer Madness is kind of public domain, right?
It is public domain. Yeah, it's old enough now. There was a guy, I can't remember his name, but I was reading one of the New Line Cinema bigwigs when he was younger, and when New Line was still pretty young. He figured out that there was a faulty copyright on it and distributed a ton of copies of this under the New Line banner and made a shitload of money.
Much like Dawn of the Dead.
Yeah.
Or no, Night of the Living Dead. My bad. Cool. So what's this one about?
So this is a propaganda film. It's part of the education exploitation genre. Like I said, this movie's from 1936, and it was primarily made, if you've never heard of Reefer Madness before, the whole point of this movie is to scare the ever-living shit out of parents and really pose marijuana as the most dangerous thing our nation has ever faced. This movie goes over the top trying to villainize weed. And to be honest with you, this movie is the reason that the public perception of marijuana has taken so long to come to the point that it is now, which is like,
oh, for sure, one of the major reasons.
Definitely the majority of people in at least America want it legalized. But yeah, it's a propaganda film showing the exaggerated and melodramatic effects of marijuana, including casual manslaughter, giggly rape attempts.
Hold on, I gotta stop you. What the hell's casual manslaughter?
Casual manslaughter, it's when you just run over a dude and keep on cruising.
Oh, they updated that. Remember the drive-through commercial?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Casual manslaughter.
And you can see where a lot of anti-drug rhetoric and future propaganda came from. Like, this movie is where it all started.
Okay.
This is where all the fear mongers get their like
casual
quote
manslaughter.
unquote facts.
I was thinking some dude in like Crocs and cargo shorts killing people.
Well, according to this movie, that's what happens. Is you just have like no fucking care. Like, he's driving. Honestly, the characters in this movie don't fucking matter. You're not meant to sympathize with anyone. You're not meant to follow a plot. This movie is just about fear mongering. It's kind of gotten this cult classic status for being so bad that it's good. It really isn't. It's just bad. It's only about an hour long, and I wanted to watch it just because I had never seen it before. But, I mean, I got exactly what I thought I was going to get, which is, like, basically just an exploitation film about weed.
I think propaganda films are interesting just because they work. Most of them work, especially one from our country. And then to kind of, like, take that and compare it to, like you said, like, what's being still spewed today about marijuana, and it's interesting. Or maybe like how you would see another topic outside of marijuana be treated like similarly,
right.
and the power of that. So you don't really see any outright propaganda films anymore.
No, but they were all the rage, and
30s and 40s. I know Hitler put a couple of them out. Yeah.
Like I said earlier, this was part of a genre, and I found this term on Wikipedia, and I think it just like perfectly explains what it is. It's education exploitation, where it's like trying to convince you of something that isn't true in the most like convincing way possible, and using fear as your major tactic, which like the fact that people in the 30s were dumb enough to fall for this shit. I mean, at the same time, standards, I guess, are lower for movies, and it's easy. It's easy to believe this shit when you're not like ingrained with it all the time.
There's less access to information. And that's dangerous.
Kind of believe what you're told.
It's interesting because like we are, not from the age at all, but that style of film, like the black and white with the voices like me, Chad, blah blah blah.
Yeah,
it's been used so much in pop culture, like in the '70s show, like almost any sitcom. If you give enough episodes, they'll be like redoing that format to like explain something as an episode. It's been done millions of times.
And this is the precursor to all of it.
Yeah, it's like it's the mold that is set for this type of movie. So you didn't really enjoy it as entertainment. It was just like interesting piece of history. It's kind of like what I'm getting from you.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I had a vague understanding of what I was getting myself into, and I wasn't surprised at all. If you've never seen Reefer Madness and you are just interested in the culture of marijuana and like legalization and why public perception of it is the way it is, certainly it's an interesting watch. I don't know if I can recommend it as a casual viewing. I'm certainly not saying throw a 420 party and invite everybody over to watch Reefer Madness. It's not even as good. Like, it's not The Room. It's not so bad that you can actually actively watch it with a group. It's
if they let
not like
Tom
that.
Wiseau do educational exploitation films, I need one of those. I demand it. It's interesting. I think it would be like a pretty good movie to watch at school when your teacher's hungover. Like, that'd be nice. I never saw it in school, but it'd be cool.
I can see that.
If you have a cool teacher, then we'll be playing it now. Ironically.
So yeah, like I said, that's on Amazon Prime. Also on Amazon Prime, and another reason I wanted to watch Reefer Madness is because I wanted to rewatch something that I'd seen a few years ago back in college. I want to see if it held up. Reefer Madness, the movie musical. This is from 2005, and it is a full-scale, like, Broadway-esque musical based on this original Reefer Madness. It was a Showtime original, like, made-for-TV movie. So, little, off the beaten path of what we usually cover, but really interesting. So this has Kristen Bell in it as...
It was my introduction to her.
Was it really?
Yeah.
So you've seen this?
Yes. This is right in my wheelhouse of blockbuster employment. 2005. Yeah.
Oh yeah. An old college girlfriend showed me this, and it was like was convinced that I would love it. Yeah, you've got Kristen Bell, Christian Campbell, who's really just, you would know from TV. Real brief appearance by Nev Campbell. And then Alan Cumming as the like devious lecturer, like the guy that's trying to stir up the fear in the town.
A couple parts in this. He doesn't
he also plays Satan, like a goat man version of Satan, and he pops in and out of the narrative. Like this movie is framed as him showing the Reefer Madness film to a group of parents at a high school, but he's popping in and out of the framing narrative and the normal story itself. And the movie that we're watching is supposed to be a recreation of Reefer Madness, so you get everything in there. You get the teenagers who are kind of seduced into this hipster party weed lifestyle. You have the the woman beater, drug dealer, pimpin' kind of guy who just hangs out with loose women. You have the crazy hophead parody who's taken to an extreme. He's in this movie, he's not played by Bobcat Goldthwait, but you would almost be convinced that he is the guy that they have playing the crazy hophead. It's almost wall-to-wall music too. It is a classic kind of musical. Watching this, you can tell that it was meant to be done on stage at some point, and some of the songs in it are
keeps the movie flowing too, because there's not much to this story.
No, there really isn't. And also this movie has a really dark sense of humor that I think is interesting.
That's why I remember digging.
There's some pretty grim jokes in this, but they somehow land, and I think it's because of the juxtaposition of how dark the joke is with how sunny and cheery and poppy the music is. And the music's not anything great. I like musicals, I like Broadway stuff generally, but certain ones you just don't really need to listen to over and over again. Then there's other ones that you just want to have on repeat. This isn't some of the songs are a little catchy, but none of them are ultimately memorable. The one that I liked the most was probably Listen to Jesus, Jimmy, which is a whole scene where Jimmy, the teenager who's been, his life has been torn apart by weed. He goes crazy and tries to rob a church. It has this whole dream sequence thing of Jesus doing a lounge singer act to him, trying to get him to quit drugs.
I don't remember that one.
No, that's the kind of humor that this one has. It definitely pokes fun at the hypocrisy of Christians and people that would be real uppity about weed.
Yeah, conservative, anti-drug people.
Yeah, and it's definitely trying to poke fun at the fear that and commotion that was stirred up because of the original Reefer Madness. I feel like there's a better Reefer Madness musical somewhere in there. There's elements of this that worked really well. There's other things that I felt fell flat, and it might be because this movie felt like it was made for and by theater enthusiasts and maybe not people who make movies. Now,
so not a movie to sit around with your buddies?
No, I really wouldn't. I wouldn't recommend it in that way. I didn't hate it, but if you are even remotely not into musicals, you're not going to like this movie. It's got that vibe to it all the way through.
So it's more dominant musical than a comedy.
Oh yeah,
it's even listed as a / horror movie, which I know there's some death, but
there's a few horror elements,
yeah,
but nothing crazy. There's sequences where a bunch of teenagers are running around like zombies because that's what the Alan Cumming is singing about. He's singing about how these parents' teens are going to be corrupted and turn into monsters. Yeah, Kristen Bell gives a really cool performance, and I like Alan Cumming generally. So the people in this give strong performances, and it might be worth a watch if you're agreeable to musicals. Just be warned, it is poppy.
I would say, and tell me if you agree, 10-15 minutes in you'll know if this is a movie for you.
Oh yeah,
and it's one of the few on the list that you can actually watch for free because it's streamable on Amazon. So, would you overall recommend it? You said you would recommend it with the disclaimer you got to be in musicals. Is that?
Yeah. I'm not saying one way or another 100% everyone's going to love this movie, because there are some people that I think you hit the nail on the head. 10-15 minutes in, you're going to know if this is the movie that you're going to sit through or not.
Another film with musical elements, and probably the standard bearer, the trailblazer of the weed comedy, is one of my picks, which was also on Amazon Prime. Cheech and Strong's first film, Up in Smoke, from 1978. And I don't remember if I saw this one. I was very aware of Cheech and Chong movies before I even like kind of knew what weed was, because my parents let me watch cool stuff. And I think I was more of a still smoking guy, because a lot of this movie felt new to me. And like a lot of stuff in the late 70s that was more cutting edge, this was kind of pieced together by experienced people. So like Lou Adler directed this, and he's like, if you look at his production credits, he's produced, you know, a bunch of hit movies, Witness, Space Jam, shit like that, all over the place for decades. You know, written by Tommy Chong and Cheech Marin. If you don't know who they are, you've probably seen them on your favorite TV show in a cameo at some point. Whenever marijuana gets brought up, it seems like in any sitcom, one of those guys will pop up. And Jack Nicholson had a big hand in this movie. Yeah, the car you famously see driven by Tommy Chong's character in the beginning of the movie is actually Jack Nicholson's car, and he was part of the production. He was actually one of the first people to see the finished product, and there's some cool trivia about that. But yeah, Jack Nicholson, a lot of people forget he was not establishment. He was part of a group of actors and directors that made stuff in the 70s. When the studio heads died kind of on their own, they had a lot of control, and this is like one of those films that came out because of that. This is not a typical studio film. It was independently funded, and it just kind of burst out into a franchise after that. That being said, you can kind of tell it's not the most professional film. There's a lot of talent there. It's you know, it's got some interesting kind of scenes where people are maybe just hanging around in a scene or in a spot longer than your typical movie. It's not, you know, cut super efficiently, but it's really funny. And, you know, the chemistry of Cheech and Chong are there. I think at this point in their careers, they were, you know, doing stand-up and skits live. So they built up these characters, and, you know, the sketches were really popular. So they strung them together in a movie. And you could tell that these are funny people that haven't really made a movie before. But I forgive it just because I think it's interesting historically, and there's a lot of funny scenes in there. Like, also, it's a comedy, and you're probably watching it not sober, so you can kind of forgive it because you're not going to be paying attention to it, you know.
Is it like, and I have to confess, 100%. I've never seen this. I've never seen a Cheech and Chong movie at all. I'm, like, familiar enough with their characters and, you know, some of their skits and stuff, but never actually watched one of the movies. Does it feel dated? Or is it still funny? It's
still funny. Like, see, its comedy holds up. I mean, to me, Animal House and like Caddyshack, they're still fantastic because funny is funny. But yeah, I mean, it's going to look dated because it was a low budget film in 1978, so 40 years ago. But there's a lot of cool stuff in there. I think I'm guessing I probably enjoy the other ones a little bit more, but I did enjoy this movie. It was interesting throughout. The storyline that's patched together. These guys meet each other hitchhiking. Cheech like mistakes Chong for a woman, so he picks him up. There's a little sexist stuff in there in the 70s. It's not the worst film for that kind of stuff, though. Like, I didn't find it overly offensive. But they go on a road trip, and it reminds me a lot like Blues Brothers. They're just really trying to escape the cops who, like, sometimes correctly think they're up to stuff, but in most cases just kind of racially profile these guys.
Okay.
And they end up driving a van 100% made out of weed, like car parts wrapped in weed. Like,
oh my God.
Yeah, from across the Mexican border into California. So you got, again, like a mission-based movie, which a lot of these weed movies aren't. I think it's because they're inspired by Cheech and Chong so much. But yeah, I think it's worth checking out. I'd say, you know, it's above average comedy. It's not the funniest thing we're going to talk about, but it's definitely not the worst either. And it's got an easier entry point than like what you discussed with Reefer Madness.
Well, this is streaming on Hulu, Amazon Prime, and if you have Max Go,
I do not,
which is Cinemax's streaming service. That one actually sucks because it's not on Roku and it's not on a lot of devices that you think it would be on, so it's kind of hard to access.
Sounds like a gas station.
Yeah, it could be.
Yeah.
But yeah, Max Go is Cinemax. So if you have that, you can access it there, or just turn on Cinemax. Maybe it'll be on. You want to go into what I think is going to be the most volatile.
Have you seen this, or just me? Did you both see it?
Seen what? Half Baked?
Yeah.
Oh, I've seen Half Baked before.
Recently, though?
Not recently.
Okay.
Not recently, but I've seen it enough times to, I think, agree with what you're about to lay down.
All right. Yeah, this is the part of the show, and it's been a while, you know, where people get upset. I don't do this on purpose. Like, people think, oh, you just hate Gremlins or Sandlot on purpose just to be like I'm trying to bring the heat or something and have a hot take. No, I'm not. But
that is kind of the purpose of our show, is to challenge nostalgia and challenge like the things that you think are good but probably aren't.
Take this as a warning, and I'll just open up by saying Half Baked fucking sucks. It's not a good movie. It's not as good as we remember it. And I have vivid memories of when Half Baked released because I was in high school, 9th grade, I believe. Me and my buddy were just starting to smoke weed, getting into weed culture. He got to see Half Baked before me. He's explaining the movie. I'm like, this sounds amazing. And Half Baked stars Dave Chappelle, Jim Brewer, Guillermo Diaz, and Harold Williams as four guys who live together. They're slackers. This is like mid-90s. This is 1998. So late 90s, but still like the slacker thing is, big theme in independent movies. And, he's telling me about how they named the Bongs, Billy Bong Thornton, Wesley Pipes, and all that stuff. And to me, as a 12 or 13-year-old, like, I thought it was hilarious. It is based, and I'm not alone here, Neil Brennan, co-writer of this and frequent collaborator Dave Chappelle, does not like this movie either. So that made me feel a little bit better because it's not what he wanted. He was like, they made a marijuana movie for kids. And I agree with that. And I felt that before even reading all the interviews because I was trying to see if I was alone. This movie's still beloved. It's got cult classic status. And to me, it plays
on TV like all the fucking time. Yeah, it's always on Comedy Central.
Yeah, I took the DVD off my shelf, put it on eBay. I have no desire to see this movie again.
So you owned this prior to...
Yeah, I probably bought it like early 2000s, like when it came on DVD, like 2001.
And it was still in your collection.
Yeah, I may have watched it one time before that. It's kind of something that will sit in your DVD collection because everyone's seen it, so you're not really showing anyone like, oh, you gotta check out Half Baked. No one's asking you to borrow it. It kind of sits there, and as I would like skim through my DVD collection, just like, oh, Half Baked, I'm keeping that. The comedy in it is so generic. So the film...
Juvenile.
Yeah. It's about, these three of the four guys trying to get the fourth guy out of jail. And also Dave Chappelle's main character is like courting this girl named Mary Jane. Again, like too on the nose. That's this entire movie is just like too on the nose with the humor. And also, it ends up being an anti-weed movie. The moral of the story is like, weed's bad. It's been holding us back. And I'm going to quit weed, which was like a big part of me and my friends getting together. It's like villainized. It's demonized. So this entire movie. I'm going to quit smoking to be with this girl because she will not accept my habit. Like, so it demonized marijuana, just kind of plays along all those stereotypes, but it's supposed to be like a hip, cool comedy. It's not.
I feel like there's a few decent gags in this movie.
There's a couple, That's why it's like Sandlot. You're killing me, Smalls, or like the Willie Nelson line or whatever. Like
them getting the dog high and the dog like flying through the sky on the worst green screen I've ever seen.
That's always gonna work, man. But like, and like the fuck you, you're cool, fuck you. That's why I call it the Sandlot. It's t-shirts, like wear the t-shirt. It's funny. Share the GIFs, share the memes. Do not go back and watch this because you're going to be disappointed or you're lying to yourself. It is, to me, unequivocally a bad movie. And like, so you have this dumb storyline, which most of these movies do, but it's not funny. The jokes are aimed to like 12 to 13-year-olds. And then you have like every stereotypical stoner on display. The Jon Stewart, paranoid stoner, like that shit is not funny. Like I feel bad for Jon Stewart.
Yeah, it's really just jokes about cliches.
It's this okay. Well, sum it with this because I could probably like scream and complain about this movie for 30 minutes. It feels like a movie that was written by someone who's never smoked weed to try to appeal to 12 to 13-year-olds. There's like no authenticity to it, and Dave Chappelle does shine in a couple scenes, and as does Jim Brewer and the rest of the comedians because they're funny guys. But when you really like go back and watch it, it's a shitty movie, and there's so many good ones that if you really want to watch a stoner movie, I think you got to pass this one up. I think it's probably on a lot of top 5 lists. It does not deserve.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah, it doesn't deserve its status. Fuck Half Baked. On to the next.
Okay, moving on.
Yeah.
Moving on. So I watched this last night, and it was one that I was really hoping wasn't going to be another Half Baked.
I was scared. I didn't watch it because I was scared I was going to feel the same way. Yeah.
So I watched 2004's Harold and Kumar Go to White Castle, which prior to my viewing of last night, I was I have a favorable opinion of. I like all the Harold and Kumar movies, honestly. I think the sequels are relatively clever, and I think as a comedy trilogy, it's better than it has any right to be.
I rewatched the Christmas one more than any of them.
The Christmas one's good. I like the Guantanamo Bay one, but I went back and I did the very, very first one because this is the one that's most closely associated with like stoner movie, classics.
There's a lot going on in this one.
There is, and this was directed by the same guy that did Dude, Where's My Car? And you can kind of tell there's like, the hapless buddy comedy dynamic going on, but these guys just have a little bit more going on than Sean William Scott and Ashton Kutcher. So this is John Cho as Harold and Cal Penn as Kumar, two like stoner buddies that are going on the ultimate munchie food run to White Castle. Like, they've decided that this is what they want for the evening. They're not ending the night without White Castle in their stomachs, and it turns into this epic, crazy quest with all these terrible obstacles along the way, which keep getting more and more ridiculous.
Another mission movie.
And one Crazy Night movie.
Yeah.
So, like, classic formula. Interesting characters. The fact that it's like a Korean... I think Harold's Korean and Kumar's Indian. So the fact that you've got two ethnic characters in this role rather than two generic white dudes, like, there's a lot of commentary on race and there's a lot of commentary on how minorities in America are treated in this movie.
I'm glad you picked up on that, because not only that, it was very timely too, because Cal Penn and John Cho were like sidekicks and racial stereotypes in two of the biggest comedies before this, which is Van Wilder, Ryan Reynolds, and American Pie. So everyone knew them as like, oh, there's those guys. And Van Wilder and American Pie were so big at the time where anybody that was in those movies like immediately became a star, at least on like an indie film level. And it's like, they definitely like, what I liked about this movie was they were fleshed out people and all the white guys were stereotypes.
Yes.
Which is not really been done. It should be done more.
Yeah, and it was like every type of stereotypical white guy. You had like the suit and tie asshole business guy. You have the extreme like skateboard punk ass
like the Mountain Dew people.
Yeah, the extreme Mountain Dew people. You have the fucking racist cops in this movie who are like so quick to arrest a black dude just because he's near kind of a crime. Yeah, so definitely a lot of commentary in this movie. A lot more than you would think a stoner movie has going on. And I'll just go ahead and cut to the chase. This movie holds up.
Thank God.
Yeah, it's not a half-baked scenario. There's some stuff in it that I think needs to be addressed, and I'll get there. But let me just talk about one of the strengths of this movie, which is the fucking cameos. The fact that you have, like, it's a journey movie, right? You have a quest that's happening, and they're bouncing from location to location, character to character to character. One of the best parts of this movie is anytime one of the following people show up. Anthony Anderson, Neil Patrick Harris.
We're gonna burn this place down, Pookie. I still remember that line. I haven't seen this movie in years.
And it hits. The comedy still hits. That's like a classic scene, and I still love it. Ryan Reynolds is the creepy male nurse. He's great. Malin Ackerman and fucking Christopher Maloney as Freak Show and his sexy wife.
God,
Jamie Kennedy is the creepy dude. Like, Kumar's out in the woods peeing at a bush. They've like pulled over on the side of the road. There's nobody around. Jamie Kennedy's the creepy guy that comes up and pees next to him and makes a big deal out of it. Oh my God, that's probably the best thing Jamie Kennedy's ever fucking done.
I also like that somehow they got Ethan Embry, who is like the wholesome white dude, to play a total asshole in this movie.
Yeah.
That was good.
Yeah. Fred Willard is in this as the guy who's trying to... Kumar's like taking a medical school exam, and Fred Willard's the guy that, is in charge of that.
It was a comedy between 2000 and 2009.
Yeah.
Fred Willard's in all of them.
He was going to be in it.
Yeah. Shit, I really want to see this now. I'm mad that I didn't watch it.
Yeah, and I rented this on Amazon for $2.99. And I would say it's absolutely worth that. I probably should have just gone out and bought the Blu-ray, but I was so apprehensive. I was so worried that it wasn't going to hold up, and I would just want to get rid of it again. But
dude, I don't know what happened to it. I had the trilogy. It was like the trilogy plus Beer Fest, which is like such a weird like tagline, but fuck yeah, I bought it. And I don't know what happened to that. I think probably lent it to someone. They didn't return it.
Yeah. Give it back, whoever that was.
You son of a bitch.
I also really like, just while we're on the topic of cameos, Gary Anthony Williams, who you've seen in stuff. If you look him up, you've seen him in stuff. He was like the weird neighbor dad on Malcolm in the Middle. He's the black guy that is in jail when Harold goes to jail.
Oh yeah,
and he gives him the speech about how like you can't sometimes people are just assholes, and you can't let it affect you because they're always going to be assholes. Like, much less eloquent when I say it, but he really, like, you know, hits at the heart of this movie, which is like, as hard as it's going to be for some people, and as big of a fucking asshole as other people can be, like, you just got to keep trucking, you got to keep moving, you got to keep going towards your destination, you got to get to White Castle. So definitely, like, more of a reason to be than something as stupid as Dude, Where's My Car?
Yeah, and these are my favorite kind of comedies, and what you're describing reminds me of what I saw with Blockers recently. Like, a lot of good shit hidden under a dumb comedy, and I think that's for this country, and I could say this time, but really any time, because Harold Kumar's like old. It's like 14 years old or something, right? Like, that's some people. It's the only way to get to them.
Now, I will say this: you want to talk about problems?
Problematic.
This movie has a few.
Okay.
As interestingly as it treats, like, immigrant Americans and just, you know, ethnic Americans of every shade, it is terribly sexist. Terribly
yeah, there's
sexist.
No, like, not until... Well, no, they keep those characters. The women they pursue eventually become, like, full-fledged characters in that second and third film.
Yeah, so there's Maria, who's, like, Harold's love interest, who lives in the apartment, like, down the hall from them or whatever, and he has fantasies about talking to her in the elevator and being suave, sophisticated, and he's eventually rewarded at the end. Like, he's brave enough to talk to her, and he kisses her, like, off guard, and she's, like, caught off guard, and she says, like, oh, we barely know each other, and yet he's like rewarded, like, he's the hero for having, like, kissed this random woman. And
yeah, and it's got some male immaturity issues.
Definitely male insecurity issues and immaturity issues. The two cameo and, like, sidekick characters that I left out of that list were David Krumholtz and Eddie K. Thomas.
Yeah, I was about to bring them up.
Who are Goldstein and Rosenberg. And these are the two, like, Jewish stereotype characters. So
I didn't know Jews were that pervy. So
no, but they're played up as Jews as well. Like, sure. Even with Eddie K. Thomas, who you might remember as Finch from the American Pie movies, he has a very, very, like, thick kind of accent. And they're, you know, at the beginning of the movie, they live in the same apartment building. Harold and Kumar go to their apartment and they say, hey, you guys want to go to White Castle with us? And they're talking about how they're watching The Gift on HBO because they want to see Katie Holmes' tits.
Yeah.
And it's just a little bit too much talk about Katie Holmes' tits. And there's a line about banging Britney Spears on the bathroom floor that doesn't land. There's also a scene later in the movie where Kumar, like, they go to Princeton at one point on their journey. And Kumar comes across these two, like, prim and proper British chicks who eventually it's the diarrhea scene where they're, like, stuck in the bathroom. But before they get to that scene, Kumar tracks down Harold and says, he says something like, Harold, you have to come down right now. Like, there's a couple sloppy wet pussies just waiting to get fucked by us. And it's like, Kumar, come on, have a little bit more class than that. Like, that was the only thing that didn't land for me. Like, as far as these characters go, I wanted to root for them, and then Kumar would do something terribly sexist, and Harold would do something terribly, like, you know, toxic male masculinity, whatever, and it just made it that much harder to root for them at some points. But
so maybe it's center in the evolutionary scale of comedy. It's not quite at Blockers or some stuff we see now, but it's becoming aware. It's like just finding awareness. And yeah, I mean, those characters, I mean, when I watched this movie, I probably laughed at all those jokes because I was an immature dude too, you know, and you kind of grow up. And I think the films themselves have grown up too. I
think it's a similar thing to the way Half Baked was written. A comedy like Harold and Kumar definitely has some jokes for 13-year-olds in there. Like, you can't be too clever in a fucking stoner movie like this, and you can definitely tell that there's some cheap writing in this. That being said, I do think it's a good representation of actual stoners and what stoners want to do. Like, the fact that their whole fucking mission is just that they saw a White Castle commercial and it looks so amazing that that's what they have to do. I understand that. Yeah, I understand the need, the mission.
Relatable.
That being said, White Castle's fucking disgusting. And have you ever had White Castle?
No, but actually I had, like, the grocery store brand. I know it's, it, like,
awful.
Blew up. We had a place called, like, Little Tavern or something in my neighborhood, which just had sliders, like, but they were, like, well made. But yeah, I know Harold and Kumar, they definitely brought back White Castle.
Yeah. Last time I was in New York City, I went to a real White Castle, like hole in the wall kind of place, and got some sliders, and they were so fucking gross, dude. It was like diarrhea on a bun. It was so gross. That being said, as much as I think White Castle's one of the grossest things you can put in your body, I still appreciate their quest in this movie.
Yeah,
like,
and I bet you it was probably
I get it.
Like Harold and Kumar go to Taco Bell, but you couldn't get that done. It was a good, because White Castle was in a situation where like, yeah, we'll take the publicity. Can't Harold and Kumar versus goes to McDonald's isn't happening.
Well, they also can't do McDonald's because then there's one on every corner. The movie's over in 20 minutes.
Good point.
But White Castles are few and far between, so it makes sense. Yeah, I would totally. You know what? If you were looking for a movie to watch on 420, you cannot do much worse than this. I'm definitely suggesting it. I'm interested in rewatching the sequels now and seeing how well they hold up. From what I can remember, Harold and Kumar Go to Guantanamo Bay is like one of the best representations of post 9/11 America in any fucking comedy ever.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely hits the sweet spot. It was just like a good timing, and it was a huge upcoming sequel that had a lot of play, and because it was a moneymaker, they got away with criticizing the current president and all that shit.
I also just love the bait and switch, the fact that they make you at the end of the first Harold and Kumar think that the sequel is going to be about them going to Amsterdam, and they totally set it up as that being the sequel, and then that's exactly where the sequel starts, and then it all goes to shit because it's a fucking Harold and Kumar movie, and they get sent to Guantanamo Bay instead,
which is a more interesting place than Amsterdam.
Yeah, you can't do like at that point it's just Deuce Bigelow too, and no one wants that.
I watched that movie. Moving on. Now, the first real big one from me, like my first weed movie, and I remember this because my mom got it for me, and she said you can go watch it with your friends. And I remember I was like, it came out, it was like Blockbuster day one. It was Ice Cube, Chris Tucker, Friday, and again, I'm like a young kid. I'm like 13, and I'm really into weed culture. I think it's the coolest thing ever. And this movie comes out, and it's got social commentary. This movie is like right in the range of the urban ghetto movies, like the U.S., like United States. Every city had their movie about the situation. Any big city, you get New Jack City, Boys in the Hood, stuff like that. Are you familiar with that?
The post Spike Lee generation.
Yeah. You aware of that stuff?
Yeah.
Okay, so like this is right off the heels of Boys in the Hood, which Ice Cube gave like an amazing, serious performance. Menace to Society's around this time, and Friday is like trying to be authentic to the same kind of neighborhood, but more with a comedy spin. So Ice Cube is actually dressed exactly like he's dressed in Boys in the Hood, and this is like the second, the movie that follows this. So that was a huge movie back then. And Chris Tucker, this is like his first big scene, or first big opportunity, big role, and he does not like take that opportunity lightly. A lot of his stuff's ad-libbed. He's like a fucking fireball. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Chris Tucker.
Vaguely. I mean, Rush Hour
and stuff.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
So I mean, this is the one that burst onto the scene, and he was like the biggest comedian for a long time, and then I think he like quit and found religion and just kind of went away.
Good for him.
Nice, yeah. So what's Friday about? It's one of those crazy one day things. Craig, played by Ice Cube, gets fired. How you gonna get fired on your day off? I don't know if you're familiar with these lines.
No, I've never seen this movie.
Yeah. His buddy Smokey, played by Chris Tucker, gets him high. They kind of sit on the porch and kind of experience their neighborhood, which I think also borrows from Do the Right Thing.
Yeah, I was just about to say, yeah.
But this is not as serious. It does a good job of not being too cartoonish, but there is like Debo, who's like this giant dude played by Tiny Lester, who's like the neighborhood bully, and like those scenes are a little bit ridiculous.
Is this the movie that Bye Felicia is from?
Okay.
Okay. I'm with you now.
Friday and the films of Ice Cube, very culture relevant, and this is like an independent movie that Ice Cube funded. Like he's the writer, star, and producer of this.
Oh wow!
And it's one of he's a truly independent black filmmaker, and Ice Cube doesn't get enough credit, I feel like, and this was reminded me when Straight Outta Compton came out. Like the dude has also built an empire. People are familiar with Dr. Dre, his fellow bandmate from NWA, and all he's done with Eminem and the Beats headphones. But fucking Ice Cube started the Friday franchise, which I think there's at least 4 of them, and they were all huge hits in one way or another. They're all profitable films. And he did Are We There Yet? Like he did those 3 family-friendly movies that made a shit ton of money. So yeah, he knows how to make a movie, and this is where he learned the ropes. Again, like Cheech and Chong, you can tell, not as obvious that it's just made by amateurs. He had a director, F. Gary Gray, who worked on like music videos and stuff.
Oh yeah, he's done tons of stuff.
Yeah, and then after Friday, like he really blew up. He did Italian Job, Set It Off, Negotiator after that.
Yeah.
Just like actually like back to back to back almost a lot of those movies. But this was like his first feature film. So there's a lot of talent here. And yeah, it's a 20-year-old movie, 20 years plus. And you can see that, but funny's funny. And I haven't seen this one in a while. There's a murder's row of comedians in this movie. You got John Witherspoon, who plays his dad.
Okay.
Who's fantastic. Regina King's his sister. Tony Cox, who you might remember from like Me, Myself, and Irene. Bernie Mac has a really good cameo. He's a pastor, and he's like visiting the neighborhood, and he's
that's a good role for him.
Fucking everybody's wives when they're staying at home. Oh yeah, he's great. He's great in this. So you can tell it really had a sense of a communal effort of people, like because it's low budget, but like you can tell like a lot of people, probably Ice Cube's friends mostly, like come together.
They all just brought their A game.
Yeah, I think it's the first I'm gonna forget his name. The dude from Green Mile. Michael Clark Duncan.
Okay.
He's briefly in a cameo in this. I think it's his first time he's ever been on screen. So it's like this movie is chock full of talent, and it's a little rough around the edges, but it's a really funny comedy. And when it wants to have social commentary, because Craig is fighting the expectations of his parents. He's dating a girl he doesn't really like, and there's the girl that is friends with his sister Nia Long that he wants to be with, and it makes sense. But he's also dealing with like the politics of the neighborhood and this guy who's like just a menace and is beats up people and just robs them. Just like basically walks up, takes your chain, takes your bike, whatever he wants, and he's frustrated with that situation. And then his friend Smokey has brings him down, influences him to the point where the drug dealer played by the Worm is this guy who sells drugs out of an ice cream truck, says if they don't pay him back at $200, he's going to murder them.
$200.
Yeah, $200 by 10 p.m. So that's the secondary plot going on. But yeah, in the end, I thought it was a really good movie. I watched it right before bed, and it's funny, it was interesting. And if you haven't seen it, I think you would like it. I mean, we're definitely kicking Half Baked off the rotation. And I think, if you're looking for some sort of marathon with the type of films we're talking about, I'd put Friday up there. I think it's definitely worthy. I think it's also more accessible than Cheech and Chong. So you start I would say start, in the present day, or maybe because I feel like every high school class had their stoner movie. Would you agree? Unfortunately, mine is Half Baked.
Yeah.
Yours is probably Harold and Kumar.
Harold and Kumar, I think, is my generation. Yeah, I definitely watched that in high school.
Yeah, so maybe start there and then go back a little bit more. But I think Friday is definitely worth checking out, and I think it holds up. I pushed it back in my DVD shelf, actually, and I'm going to keep that one.
Okay, cool. I might have to borrow that from you, actually.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So while we're talking about movies that we have revisited, let's take a break from the buddy comedies and do something a little bit more dramatic. So I watched a movie that I've seen before called The Whackness.
I've seen this before too.
This stars Josh Peck, who you might know from Drake and Josh, Ben Kingsley, Olivia Thirlby, Famke Jensen, brief cameo by Mary-Kate Olsen, also a brief cameo by Method Man. So there's some people in this, but this is definitely an indie movie. It's from 2008, and it was written and directed by Jonathan Levine, who you might know from 50/50. He directed that. He didn't write it.
I like 50/50.
I like 50/50 a lot. He also wrote and directed Warm Bodies, which is okay.
I was about to say the same thing.
It's okay.
Yeah. I remember liking this movie.
Different kind of zombie movie.
Yeah. I remember thinking this was smart and cool. And Josh Peck playing counter.
This is
role because he was from Drake and Josh.
Yeah, he was the Nickelodeon kid before this, and this was also right after he dropped a ton of weight. So I think this was him trying to break out and show that he's got a little bit more range. That being said, he hasn't really, as a dramatic actor, he hasn't blown up. People don't really expect that out of him, and you can kind of see why his performance in this isn't great. It's not awful. I think the character that he plays, Luke Shapiro, is a little weak. What's this movie about? We should get there first. So this movie takes place in the summer of 1994, in New York. This has a hip hop soundtrack to it. It's very engrossed in the time period.
That specific time.
Yeah. Very, very specific
kind of like
time.
Lady Bird in a way. Very specific time and place.
And
similar character.
Yeah, so Josh Peck plays Luke, who's like just graduated high school, and he's walking around New York City with like an ice cream cart, but he's selling weed out of it. And he's like wayward. He knows he wants to go to college in the fall, but he doesn't really know what he wants to do. He's like in love with this girl Stephanie from his class, played by Olivia Thirlby, and she is the stepdaughter of Ben Kingsley's character, Dr. Squires. And Luke and Dr. Squires develop this relationship where Luke's basically selling him weed for therapy sessions. And Luke's like reluctant to be in this therapy session, but
this is during the time where Ben Kingsley is probably the coolest he's been. Like, I forget what he did before and after this, but I remember Ben Kingsley was
like Lucky Number Slevin era.
Yeah,
you
like
know,
he's
when
hot
he's trying stuff. Yeah.
And like, and he's in the point of his career where you'll watch a movie because he's in it.
I do think though that he is capable of turning in goofy, weird performances.
Oh yeah, for sure. Iron Man 2.
Yeah, well, Iron Man 3.
Iron Man 3.
He's weird in that. I like him in that, though. This one is I don't know. Everyone in this movie feels like an indie movie caricature, and he definitely feels like the carefree older dude who wishes he was young. Like he's playing a very specific type. And
Arrested Development, you know, the therapist that can't solve his own problems. So.
And it's not overly convincing. Same thing with Josh Peck's character. They set him up pretty early on to be like they want you to sympathize with him. The way the movie's framed, they want you to sympathize with him and see him as a hero, even though he's just this like wishy-washy little bitch. Like, I hate to say it, but he just complains about everything.
His family sucks. Like his
family life, his home life is rough. And he's in love with this girl that doesn't even recognize him. But you don't feel like. So this is definitely a coming of age story, and his love sick puppy attitude is bullshit. Like, I don't know if the movie's trying to convince you that it's bullshit or if it's trying to side with him or not. I'm unconvinced of what it's trying to do.
You didn't find you weren't sympathetic towards his character?
No, I wasn't. In terms of him, like, yes, him as a high school graduate who doesn't know what he's doing in the fall, yes.
The ghost year.
Yeah,
that's a thing. That's a real thing.
He's obsessed with this girl who does not give him the time of day.
But you've never been there? I thought that was pretty authentic.
Yeah.
But like an immature, like he doesn't understand what relationships are or love is.
No, and he talks a big game, and but then you find out later on that like he's a virgin, and he comes early when he has sex with the girl finally, and just generally embarrasses himself. Tells her that he loves her, and she reacts as you would expect someone to react like that. If you've barely known them at all.
Yeah, he's very like emotionally vulnerable.
Yeah,
yeah. I thought it was interesting because like the perspective of the drug dealer, which is going to be on the final when we talk about. It didn't really up until this point. You didn't really get much to movies about the weed dealer, and like the fact that everyone knows him. Like there's scenes where like he sells weed for a party, but he doesn't get invited in. He knows all the people, and like no one hangs out with him. They just use him.
Yeah.
And then also like it's called the whackness. I think he pushes against everyone else's authenticity, but then he realizes how inauthentic he is. And like that's where like I guess that's his growth moment,
Yeah, I don't feel like I don't feel like Josh Peck was the performer to bring it home. I also just think Jonathan Levine. This movie has a lot of great direction. There's some really interesting shots in this movie, and the way they framed it in 1994 over a summer, like there's these interstitials, kind of like 500 Days of Summer, where you get like a month on the screen, and it's very stylized in that regard at times. But I feel like it's ultimately a weak script with weak characters, weak motivations. Nothing's super convincing. It also does really early on. It does one of the things that I fucking hate in a movie, which is like quick voiceover narration to introduce you to who the character is in their world. And it's literally telling, not showing. I even pulled up the script here just because I want to read like how cringy this is. At one point in the opening. Yeah, so here's the opening narration after the first scene with Dr. Squires in his office. This is Luke's narration. I met Dr. Squires in the spring of '94, first as a client, then as a patient. At the beginning, we didn't talk about much of anything. I didn't know why I kept seeing him, to be honest. But sometimes it's nice to have someone to talk to, even if you're just talking shit. He told me that the drug thing was a cry for help. Maybe he's right. I am Luke Shapiro. I'm a drug dealer. Hear my cry. It was just so, I don't know, like, no one gives a shit about this whiny white boy and his depression problems. Yeah, and I've been there. Like I looked like this guy when I was a kid. I've been a whiny white boy. I get it. I wasn't interested in watching his journey at all.
I'm thinking maybe this is a shared universe. Levine, he also directed The Night Before.
Yes.
And what if that character ends up being Mr. Green, because they also talk about the character Mr. Green, played by Michael Shannon. Like, he's talking about he's never really had friends and blah blah blah, and he throws these big parties. Isn't they before New York City?
Yeah,
maybe it's the same guy.
Maybe it is.
I wish they would have dropped the name hint. Maybe it's an Easter egg. Maybe. I don't know. Anyways, The Night Before better than most of the movies we're talking about.
Yeah,
and I feel like maybe I should have snuck that one in there. But I think the Wackness, where are you sitting on that though?
I don't think it holds up. I really don't. There's just not much here to chew on, and it's frustratingly boring at times. Where the concept and the characters on paper should work a lot better than they do, and I feel like if you recast some of this movie and retold the script a little bit, it could have been a lot stronger than it was. I think Jonathan Levine's gone on to do better stuff. You can tell that this is and the early work of somebody who does have talent. It's not it's a competently made movie. It's not a piece of shit. I wasn't at any point upset that I was watching it. I was just bleh.
Yeah, stuff like that. A movie that is just okay, when you keep rewatching it, you start to just notice its flaws more than anything else.
And I can totally see people that have seen this movie, and you've seen this movie once, right?
A couple times, yeah.
You've seen a couple, but it's probably been a while.
Yeah.
I can see with time there being a favorable opinion of this movie. Over time, you're like, oh, yeah, I remember The Wackness. It's not a bad movie. But that's about where it ends. It's not something it's not an indie movie like Attack the Block, where 10 years after it comes out, you're still trying to convince people to go watch Attack the Block. I would never go out of my way to tell somebody oh my God, you have to watch The Wackness. It's okay if you want a more dramatic kind of piece, and if you like early 90s hip hop, there's a lot to get there, stylistically, but there's not much going on, I think, at the script level, and that's where this movie kind of ends for me.
Yeah. So it's not going up on our Mount Rushmore, and I wanted to be noted
no, definitely
that
not.
I thought and avoided saying Mount Cushmore. I'm not saying it in the Mount Rushmore.
Someone else has made that joke. Somebody higher than us has made that joke before.
These jokes come in my head, and I'm like, nah. It's better. It's a comedic trick, Matt, where you say, I'm not going to say that, but you kind of did, so you don't take any of the blame for the joke. You just get the good part.
I should say before we move on, not to derail your joke analysis.
Yeah, it's fine.
But The Wackness is on Netflix. That's where I watch it. If you're interested in watching it, there you have it. Yeah, it's on Netflix.
I think for the timing, its time has come and gone. I mean, it was about a time. It was 5 years, 10, 15 years.
Well, it was made in 2008 and it's set in 1994.
But it was really good. It was a good if you're a Drake and Josh fan and you just were waking up to drugs and alcohol and you're going to high school, it probably was a great movie for those people. It had its time and place. But it's been passed by.
And you know what? As much as I shit on Josh Peck's performance, he did better than I think Drake Bell would have done with the same role.
Well, we can remake this. the re-Wackness. We can find this out. I don't know. I know those guys are both doing something. I don't know. Finally, and we saved the best for last, possibly. The 2008 Seth Rogen, James Franco team up, Pineapple Express. Have you watched this recently?
Yeah, I've seen this in the last... I want to say I watched this back in December. It's April now, yeah. It was right before I started, chronicling every movie that I watched in a row. I think it was back in December. But I've definitely, I've watched it recently enough.
Okay, so this is my go-to. This is my favorite weed-related movie. Just because, one, it's action comedy, which, as you guys know, is one of my favorite genres. Oh, yeah. And I think people forget how much action is in this movie. And I like that all of the paranoid stupid theories that these stoners come up with come to fruition, which I thought was good.
Yeah.
You got a really cool opening with our boy
Bill Hader, like
the introduction of marijuana as a possible military use. I don't know, and that's the setting for both the beginning and ending of the movie.
I do love this whole movie, but Bill Hader's cameo at the beginning is my favorite part of the whole fucking movie.
I saw it in theaters, and that scene, I was like, I was just locked in. It's a great opener because, like, when you watch with a group, especially where like laughter is infectious, that scene you're laughing, and the first time you see this movie, at least for me, you really don't stop. Like, it just keeps going.
No, it keeps going. But yeah, when he says, feel like a slice of butter melting on top of a big old pile of flapjacks.
Yeah.
That's typically...
Item 9 is the bee's knees.
Those are my go-to quotes for if I get super high and someone asks me how I'm doing, that's my go-to quote.
They could just do a fucking prequel with Bill Hader's character. But that really has nothing to do with the movie. It's just a good opener, which I thought was real savvy to do by David Gordon Green, who's teamed up with Seth Rogen, Evan Goldberg, and James Franco in this movie. Seth Rogen plays a very interesting character. He's a process server, so he's the guy that's like, hey, he sneaks up on you and serves you, usually with like divorce papers or something like that.
Yeah.
And
court summons.
Yeah, so he's got a pretty laid back job. He's kind of got life figured out for a loser. Like, he is partially the stereotypical, stoner, Arrested Development character who's not living up to his potential. He's dating a high school senior when he's like 25 or 26.
That is probably the only
Amber Heard
problematic thing with this movie.
I mean, it kind of defends it. She's technically adult, I guess.
Yeah, they make it clear she's 18.
Yeah, legally, and he is about as mature as her, and like their relationship is played out through this crazy scenario. So I thought it was an interesting character. Definitely a lot of thought given to this character, more than your typical comedy, and definitely more than your typical like weed comedy.
Yeah,
and his weed dealer is played by James Franco. In one of the first roles where James Franco kind of breaks out and plays a comedian. This is from my memory, like, where people realize like James Franco is funny as shit, and him and Seth Rogen have all-time chemistry.
Oh, their chemistry is on fucking point.
So it goes through the drug dealer drug customer relationship, and like their whole intro scene is classic. Like, he nails it. Like, I think it's very authentic representation of all these type of characters, the character archetypes. Not that they like encapsulate everyone who uses marijuana, because everyone smokes weed. They're just people. Like, that's what I hate about Half Baked. It's fucking stupid.
Half the people in your life that you don't know whether or not they smoke weed. Like, think of all the people in your life that you don't know whether or not they smoke weed. Half of those people definitely smoke weed, and you would be shocked to know it.
And half of those people sell weed. But so yeah, it's all about Rogen and Franco and their crazy journey as Seth Rogen accidentally witnesses a murder that's covered up by the police. And this character played by Gary Cole, who's like a drug kingpin. And Gary Cole is just so fucking good, dude. Can you just like take a moment to appreciate Gary Cole? When is he ever misfired? I think
not once.
His batting average is 1,000, and Gary Cole always knows like what he's in and what he's supposed to do. Think about him in this film or playing, Ricky Bobby's dad. It's just fantastic.
It's Office Space, probably the classic.
And this, and this movie is like a time and place where you can get Gary Cole, you can get fucking Craig Robinson playing a henchman.
Oh man, him and Kevin Corrigan together as the henchmen are so good.
Yes, they have this fantastic relationship where they're like passively aggressive. Like, Craig Robinson thinks that Kevin Corrigan's character is just like lost it. He's too much of a family guy. He's lost his edge, and like they definitely had some hitman henchman chemistry, and that's lost. Yeah. And Craig Robinson's really sensitive about it. And like Craig Robinson, like he's always like he's got a sharp tongue, but in this, like, the fucking physical humor of dipping your hand in like macaroni and cheese and saying it's still warm. They just left. It's some of the best writing I've ever seen in my life, and it doesn't stop there. Ed Begley Jr.'s scene where he's like, "I will take you out and fuck you in the street," is again one of the best lines delivered in that decade and since.
Yeah,
like you just have comedian after comedian.
Danny McBride.
Danny McBride, like the fact you can get Danny McBride at this point to play like he's probably third character in this.
He's third billing. Yeah, I think so.
He's like James Franco's plug. He's like the connection to Gary Cole's character, and he plays like a sensitive guy who like waffles back and forth between his loyalty to James Franco and what's right, and just not trying to die. And they put Danny McBride through so much torture.
Yeah,
and the fucking like the violence in this movie is like on point. Like if you take all the comedy out of this is a very violent action movie. It's gory, like people lose fingers, like they crack their head on toilets,
cars dropped on them.
Yeah, like it could succeed as just like a violent action movie, which I like. I like when thought is given to all sides of this of the film. So it's funny as shit. The chemistry works, which you need for a great buddy comedy, and I think this is one of the better buddy comedies of all time. Maybe that's a podcast for another day, but I just love this movie, man.
It's so
10th
rewatchable.
anniversary, kind of just coming around, and I think it still holds up. It feels fresh. It feels contemporary, and it's from a decade ago.
Well, because these guys are still making movies this good too. These guys at this point can do no wrong by me. I didn't love Sausage Party, but that's probably the only one that they've collaborated on that I'm not jazzed about.
Yeah, and this is one of the highest grossing movies that we're talking about the whole time. Like it's a $100 million maker. It's one of the ones that catapulted Seth Rogen into like almost guaranteed box office success. That's why you pretty much see when any year he wants to come out with a movie, he's going to. And I just like to remind I like champion this when Disaster Artist came out last year. I know people get exhausted and people love to hate Seth Rogen or especially James Franco, but these guys are really talented, and I will always like them. I don't get into the real life persona. I don't think any of them have done anything too horrible. I know Franco had his thing with like sexual harassment, which I don't know how that. But to me, they seem like decent dudes, and I don't even get into that part of them. Like I get it. Seth Rogen made like the biggest movie 5 years in a row, so a lot of people are going to hate him. And just kind of celebrate when he faltered with Green Hornet and stuff like that. He does
kind of play the same character in most movies. Like, he's always a Seth Rogen type. But I like Seth Rogen enough that I'm okay with that.
Well, he's an everyman. That's what he is. Like, he plays that kind of type. Paul Rudd does it too. He's just, like, so relatable in a way that, you can't really stray too far from that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I love this movie. I'd say I gotta rewatch Harold and Kumar, but I'm putting this up there. Like I think this and Friday are my definitely see these movies. Maybe Pineapple Express more than any, just because I can't imagine you not liking it.
I will have to say I will put Pineapple Express above Harold and Kumar. I think it just holds up a little bit better. Like I said about Harold and Kumar, there's some really sexist jokes in there, and it's stuff that is just a little on the cringy side. Pineapple Express, I don't feel like is ever laughing at the expense of anyone other than its goofy main characters. Those are the only people being put in danger and being made to look like idiots. Harold and Kumar is a little mean-spirited at times, as comedies of that era and of that type were. Like, it's definitely following in Van Wilder's footsteps and Dude, Where's My Car footsteps. But yeah, no, Pineapple Express, if I had to pick one stoner movie to watch on 420, that would be it.
Okay, so that's your number one pick. Just kind of reviewing everything. Yeah, Pineapple Express is my must-see. Friday, I think you should check it out if you haven't seen it, and if you have fond memories of it, I would go back and revisit it without any worries. Cheech and Chong I would describe as interesting and funny. You definitely need to be into older stuff. I know some people just can't get it with things that are older than them. And then, Half-Baked. Sorry, fuck that movie. It sucks. Go ahead and at me.
Yeah, original Reefer Madness. Don't really need to watch it. You pretty much know what you're going to get. But it is a cool peek back into history. Reefer Madness, the movie musical. Like I said earlier, recommending that if you're into musicals, if you're a stoner who likes singing along to Frozen or whatever the fuck, you're probably going to dig it. Harold and Kumar definitely holds up. Little problematic, but not anything that detracts from how funny the movie actually is. And the whackness is just not as good as you remember it.
Yeah. So, hopefully you guys are enjoying your 420 or whenever you're listening this.
Be safe. I know that's the lame thing to say, but, don't smoke weed and do something fucking stupid. Give people a reason to want to legalize it and make money off of this. It's a industry that is just waiting to boom if we can get people to get on board with how, non-hurtful it is. I don't know about you. I'll gladly light up a joint over taking a drink of alcohol any day. any day.
I'm pro marijuana. You're saying like don't contribute to the stereotypes.
Yeah.
Or do it in the safety of your own home. You can order food. Okay. You can order food. You can order movies. It's one of the best times. It is the best time to be a marijuana enthusiast.
And it's only going to get better.
So like us on our social medias, rate and review us so other people can find out about us and
tell your friends.
Give us a chance. Tell your friends. Yeah. And then, like you said, light up, vape, consume, or don't. It's okay if you're sober. Check out these funny movies. And after they've watched them, Matt, and they've filled their bellies and their lungs, what would be your final piece of advice?
I would say go to bed.
Abba Zabba, you're my only friend.
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.